For the first couple of years, it was more small, progressive dealers, that were buying our AI products. Now we are seeing massive demand and massive adoption from, what I call mid-major and major groups, right? Many of these folks have somebody in the boardroom in their ivory tower asking, what's your strategy with generative AI? It's all over the headlines.
Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with Devin Daly, CEO of Impel, a cutting-edge tech platform using AI to transform how car dealerships operate. We explore the best AI use cases in dealerships and get an exclusive look behind his recent $100 million acquisition. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: CDK Global, CDG Recruiting, and Impel. And now, let's get into the show. Devin Daly, back on the CDG podcast. Devin, welcome.
Appreciate you having me, Yossi. Always a pleasure.
It's great to have you back on. So I want to say we spoke about 6 months ago. Lots has changed since then. Our industry went through some cyber attacks and whatnot, which you know about. You spent over $100 million on some stuff. So we'll talk about that. I didn't spend $100 million since we last spoke, but we had our fair share of fun as well. So I'm pumped to really have you back on and talk about what you're working on, AI, what's the latest for the industry.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it, Yossi, and thank you and the car dealership guy crew for all the coverage during the cyber attack. That was very helpful to all of us in the industry. Obviously the big news, I think starting with, who is Impel, just in case there are any new listeners. So Impel is the market leading conversational AI provider to the auto industry. We work with around 8,000 dealerships. And, our goal is really to use AI to manage all customer communications throughout the life cycle. It's our firm belief that in the next 5 years, we will see a transformation take place where dealerships will go from being massively human capital intensive, employing 150 people per store or per rooftop, to being much more AI and automation enabled. And we really think we're sort of leading the charge in that evolution that's forthcoming.
Devin, before we get into the nitty gritty, I get lots of questions from dealers like, hey, do I need to be using AI? And I would say there's a wide spectrum of competency, right? Some people know about this world. They're users of like the basic AI tools. Others have no idea. They just hear other people talking about it and they're like, do I need to be using this? Is it going to save me money? Is it going to make me money? I think the first question is, since we last spoke, right? Has anything meaningfully changed in AI within the automotive industry and just the way it's being used on a daily basis?
Yeah, great question, Yossi. I would say definitely in the last 6 months, a lot has changed. I've been in and around investing in or operating technology for, the last 15 years. And I've really never seen things move at the pace that we're seeing with artificial intelligence. It seems like every week you've got a new algorithm or use case or case study being deployed. You've got new regulations entering. Obviously, there've been some famous lawsuits. There's been, again, interesting new use cases. Obviously, NVIDIA's had a lot of the change. So yes, I think it's changed quite a bit. I'd say generally, though, in terms of where we are in the adoption cycle, there's a famous sort of concept that was coined by Gartner, who is the large technology advisory and research firm. And it's called the Gartner hype cycle. It has 5 phases, right? So you start with the technology trigger, which in this case is probably the release of generative AI. It's got a huge run up to the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, all the way over to the plateau of productivity. Where I would say is where we are today is somewhere around that trough of disillusionment, where we're starting to really fed out the haves and have-nots, and dealers and OEMs and people in the industry are starting to realize that it takes more than vaporware and chat GPT to drive meaningful business results and truly differentiated experience. I think what we're seeing now is in that slope of enlightenment phase, customers are starting to realize what's really required to be an enterprise grade provider to deliver business value. We've had famous examples of hallucinations or jailbreaks happen in the automotive industry. So you need a provider that has hallucination prevention, jailbreak defenses. You need the ability to institute and control communication protocols. You need a blend of different LLMs depending on goals. And most importantly is automotive specific training data, which brings us to our most recent acquisition in Outsell.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. And I also want to ask you how that came to be about. Before we get there, tell me more, right? I try to put myself in the shoes of the average dealer, right? Who's listening to this right now and wondering, what is truly like going to change in my business right now? What can change today with the capabilities? So you said there's been a lot of change, but just talk to me like practically, right? Through day to day right now, what is changing and what can be done to leverage this to bring more efficiency to the dealerships or whatnot?
Yeah, I think, there's really kind of three key areas that we are seeing today AI delivering business value for dealers. One is really sales and lead management, right? So there are big problems associated with, managing sales inquiries, and that half of inquiries come in overnight. Many inquiries require long-term follow-up, and many inquiries or leads just never actually engage, with a BDC rep. And so you're sapping up valuable human resources. All of those can be very easily solved with AI that works 24 hours a day, indiscriminately does the long-term follow-up, and really allows your BDC people to focus on building relationships, building rapport, upselling other products. That's one use case. The second use case is really around service retention and loyalty. And so dealerships are sitting on a massive treasure trove as it relates to their DMS. They've got 5 or 10,000 records of current customers, but they really have no way to go and mine and leverage that valuable database. AI can intelligently start to do outreach based on predictive modeling, based on driving habits, based on DMS data, based on maintenance requirements, to automate all of that outreach, keep that person coming back in for service, all via SMS as well as email. And third is very simply web chat. Web chat's a category that hasn't innovated in a long time. And so you've either got human-based web chat that is often expensive and very delayed in responding to a consumer, or you've got, what I would call kind of scripted logic analog web chat, which doesn't really actually answer a consumer's questions, really is just a glorified lead form. With generative AI, you could bring a really enhanced chat experience with massively improved conversation quality, but still experience superior conversions to what's out there today. So again, it's really sales lead management, SMS, email, text message, service loyalty and retention, using that same, channel of communication to get people coming back in for service. And then third is really next generation chat experience on the website.
This episode is brought to you by CDK Global, who will once again be streaming its annual industry conference, CDK Connect 2024 on October 22nd. This year's virtual Connect conference will feature CDK's latest product innovations, a keynote from CEO Brian MacDonald, and live breakout sessions focused across all operations of the dealership. You can register for CDK Connect at the link in our show notes below or by visiting cdk.com/connect. That's CONNECT, cdk.com/connect. Okay, so 2 questions on that. The first one is, what's adoption today, right? You just mentioned 3 important parts of interacting with the dealership at a dealership. But what is adoption across our industry right now? Is it like skyrocketing? Is it, is it pretty, what does it look like?
I would say we've definitely experienced acceleration. It feels like, we crossed the chasm. We acquired our first AI business in May of 2021. And I would say for the first couple of years, it was more small, progressive dealers, that were buying our AI products. Now we are seeing massive demand and massive adoption from, what I call mid-major and major groups, right? They're all many of these folks have somebody in the boardroom in their ivory tower asking, what's your strategy with generative AI? It's all over the headlines. And, that plays really nicely. And it's been a great tailwind for us. But yeah, we're definitely feel like we've crossed the chasm where, the large majority of dealerships, large groups, large publicly traded retailers are reaching out to us asking, what can we do to implement your AI products across our stores?
You're an incredible success story because I am one of those dealers that worked with you when you were Spin Car, right? I was a used car dealer and I forget I forget the name of the person from your team that reached out. I have it in my emails. I could literally find this from like a decade ago. But I used Spin Car. I was probably an early customer because it solved a real problem for us. We're talking about like the mid 2010s, right? So you've clearly come a long way. You're way more than just a Spin Car or vehicle photography company. Tell me a little bit about why you just mentioned you made a really big acquisition, right? Over $100 million. That's a big deal for our industry, and for really pushing the boundaries of the customer experience and what dealerships can do. Just start to give us some context, right? What was this acquisition of Outsell about? Why did you do this? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Yossi. And yes, we certainly remember, when you first acquired our merchandising products at your store, and appreciate your business. We'll have to figure out what
I'll look
customer
up the
number.
name, by the way. I'll
Yeah,
look up the name
yeah,
of the sales rep as
yeah.
you're doing this.
Yeah, please do. No, it's great. Absolutely. I think I know who it was. Yeah, so cool. So yeah, we acquired Outsell. We announced that in July. That was, over $100 million acquisition for us. And really what that does for us is gets us closer to our North Star goal of continuing to cement ourselves as the de facto standard of automotive AI. Outsell is known as a market leading automotive marketing automation platform, but I think what they bring to us that excites us even more is they've got really, really rich data about customers going back 20 years. So back to 2004, they've been tracking 68 million American consumers, what people engage with, how do they service, what time do they service, what channels, what time of day do they, interact with different communications, they visit the site, what's their propensity, what's their value to a dealership. They've got this really rich and deep asset, which is that 20 years of customer data. The value to Impel is there is a notion that as AI over time becomes more common and democratized, the companies that will win out will those that have access to the largest troves of training data to train on vertical specific use cases. In our case, that is obviously powering and honing our models for, specific automotive use cases.
All right. So you mentioned retention or just going into the treasure trove of data, right? Being more efficient with your prior customer data. I just did a podcast with Vince Sheehy, owner of Sheehy Auto Group in Maryland, Virginia area, 30 plus rooftops. And one of the cool moments of the podcast was that there was such an emphasis at their stores on retention. And we started talking about retention. And, myself also from my prior experience, right? Retention was a big thing because we all know it's a lot cheaper to keep a customer or less expensive than it is to acquire a new one. So my theory is that, and you clearly, I have to imagine you have a lot more insight into this, but my theory is that dealers will just naturally pay a lot more attention to retention as the market consolidates, as demand continues cooling, which is the reality that the market is experiencing. And, people always pay some attention to retention, but I think that as customer acquisition costs rise, it just makes more sense for people to pay more attention to it. So my question to you now is, how can you drive that? Right. So you mentioned your acquisition and what Outsell can bring to the table, but what can you do to actually drive retention at dealerships?
Yeah, so we universally see when customers adopt our Service AI product, and now when they also adopt Outsell on top of our Service AI product, we're making a demonstrable improvement in their retention rates, or in the case of Toyota, into their TLE rates. But, Yossi, I could not agree with you more, right? I can't remember if it was Roger Penske or whom it was that said, you should never lose a customer. You should have a customer for life. What dealerships fail to do today is really do that proactive outreach, right? Most service BDCs can't even keep up with all of the inbound phone calls. The phones are ringing off the hook. There's zero chance that they have the ability to go and do all of that manual outreach to the 5,000 people that are sitting in their DMS system. That's exactly what AI can do. It is a great use case for AI to go and do all of that menial, repetitive outreach. One thing I think when we first started doing service, we acquired a business called Car Labs in October of 2022. We expected that we might get high opt-out rates, or, customers might say, stop bothering me. The reactions have actually been the exact opposite. You would be shocked how often a consumer that the AI follows up with 3, 4, 5 times apologizes, to the AI, thinking it's a human. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've been neglecting that. Thank you so much for the persistence. Thank you for the reminder. It's been shocking how thankful people are. They view it almost like their own service concierge, reminding them, staying on top of them, being that voice of the dealership. And, look, I drive a Land Rover, which is not the most reliable car. I kind of wish my dealership had somebody reaching out to me, reminding me that, hey, you should do this preventative maintenance before it turns into a much bigger issue. So, that's a long way of saying, not only does it positively impact retention rates for dealerships, but we're actually seeing an enhanced customer experience as well.
Yeah. I feel like, and I've definitely, I'm part of this, so I'm no exception, but I feel like the industry was sort of slept on its nose in a way on just customer data. Because I just remember, this was never the industry, the way it's making progress on retention nowadays and leveraging customer data for more efficiency is just, bringing better profitability, is definitely cutting edge. Now, in terms of your vision right? So you have multiple products now under your roof. You're really all in on creating, the future dealership, right? The AI driven dealership. Give us an overview, right? If I could be looking at a picture right now, or if I could use generative AI to show me an image of the dealership of the future. And when I talk about future, I'm not talking about 20 years away. I'm talking about, 2, 3, 4 years away, right? We're talking about 6 months, tons of progress, right? So what does that look like? Or like what is going to continue changing? How are you really working to continue pushing the envelope and to remain cutting edge?
Yeah, absolutely, OC. So again, I think it is that notion of one AI brain powering all touch points. So you've got one AI system that is reaching out when you're engaging for selling a vehicle or acquiring a vehicle rather. And once you buy that vehicle, the same AI picks up and does much more sophisticated CSI surveying. And then after purchase, after the CSI survey, maybe you start to try to sell F&I and accessory products using that same AI voice. And then once that's been exhausted, AI reaches out for service, which we just talked about, building that bond of loyalty. Then eventually for vehicle acquisition, you've got this one AI voice controlling all communication, sharing insights across those different touch points. So, right, if I know that Yossi responds during the sales process between 6 and 8 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because that's when he doesn't have his child, for example, same thing can be used in service to target him during that window where we know he's likely to engage. So again, you've got that one AI brain creating this virtuous cycle. What will that allow? That will allow humans to delegate or hand off those tedious, repetitive tasks and allow them to focus on relationship building and rapport building. One of Outsell's longest running customers, is an 80-year-old gentleman, runs a group not far from you, believe it or not, Yossi. And one of his best practices, he still comes into the office every day or into the dealership every day, and he asks his general managers, who are my most valuable customers visiting today? I'd like to go and shake their hand and thank them for the business. When you have sophisticated AI managing a lot of the BDC operations, a lot of the outreach, doing a lot of that ongoing communication, it allows somebody to then have that more personal effect and go and shake the hand, build rapport. In an AI system, you can also be alerted to who those people are when they're coming in, because to your point, you don't ever want to lose a customer. You want to retain them in your service drive and don't have them defect, but you definitely don't want to lose one of those high value customers.
I think I know what you're talking about. And you don't need to name them because I think, it's fair. But I think it was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. All right, here's my concern. So we just spent a decade trying to like integrate systems, right? Go to the dealership, the integrated dealership of the future, where your DMS and your CRM and blah, 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 everything is connected. Why? Because it's freaking easier. We've all been at the dealership where you have to hand off 3 different systems. The F&I manager is stressed. The customer is waiting a long time. It sucks, right? Okay, so we're there. Minor blip when the cyber attacks happened, a couple months back, and there was some questions. Does this make more sense? But let's be honest, we're not going back. So now I put my dealer hat on, right? Am I going to have 5 different AI tools? Or do you see a future where it's all going to be under one umbrella so that it all works together, right? It has the same consistent information on the customer. Okay, like, can you imagine if I talk to the chatbot and I have to tell it something, and then I go and speak to the service department and it has no idea, it doesn't have context from prior conversations. I think this could be a real issue. So what's your take on this? Are we going to a world where AI will quickly become centralized within the dealership, or are dealers going to have 5 different AI tools, 5 different vendors? Like, what's that going to play out like?
Yeah, great question, Yossi. So you keyed in on what is our fundamental strategic, sort of product strategy or strategic positioning is that, we believe that one centralized communication AI platform will win out versus point solutions, because to your point, not only can you not share insights, right? So knowing that Yossi comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, between 6 and 8 is when he is most likely to respond, or, if Yossi responds, what we call zero party data. So if, you're engaging with our sales chat bot and you respond and say, I just had my 3rd child, can a 3rd car seat fit in the back of the Q5? That can also be used to hone your customer profile that will then be, informing the additional AI activations. Even more simply though, than that concept of like insight sharing is just having one voice with threaded communications enhances response rate, right? So if you've got 5 different point solution providers, a customer is getting a text or an email from 5 different people, 5 different domains, 5 different numbers. There's no context in the threaded conversation versus with Impel, you've got that one voice, not only again, self-improving based on Yossi's behaviors, but secondly, having that threaded, consistent person feeling like that singular sort of concierge experience. So that is certainly our view, Yossi, is that, we will see consolidation towards one AI provider that manages all customer communications.
Yeah, it's really one of the first things that came to my mind because I'm even dealing with it right now. Like, we also just acquired a company in the recruiting space, as you saw, and it's a different CRM, and it's something small. But the first thing that goes through your mind is, do we centralize this? Look, I'm not that smart, but I understand compounding, and it just makes sense. Like, it's logical, right? So if I'm a dealer, look, clearly you have skin in the game here, but if I'm a dealer, I'm thinking, I don't want to have 5 different solutions. It makes sense for me to invest my time, resources in a solution where it can all be integrated so that I know we have, it's a one-stop shop. And from logins to context to just the customer experience and employee experience, everything is really centralized and you can build on top of that.
Yeah, again, could not agree more. I think there are huge efficiency benefits for a dealership. The customer experience is better. And again, as dealers look to control their own first-party data, being able to have one system that self-improves those customer profiles based on, again, how a customer responds or engages. Like for our service product, you would be shocked at how often we're able to enhance customer profiles and how often customers respond to the service AI agent saying, I sold this vehicle, I serviced elsewhere, I no longer have this car, I crashed this car. Just those simple responses can be used to then really improve the DMS data or improve that customer profile, knowing to stop reaching out to them for, Toyota maintenance if they no longer drive a Toyota, for example.
One of the craziest things about the Car Dealership Guy platform is our direct access to literally thousands of dealership and automotive employees. So naturally, I often hear this question: CDG, can you use your network to help me fill an open role at my company? Well, now I can. Building on the success of my free industry job board, I'm proud to launch CDG Recruiting, a more hands-on white glove automotive recruiting service. Whether you're looking to fill roles in dealership management, C-suite, F&I, fixed ops, auto tech, SaaS, we take the hassle out of hiring by doing the heavy lifting for you. And here's the best part: we vet and screen thousands of candidates so you don't have to. And with our placement guarantee, hiring through CDG Recruiting is 100% worry-free. Our team has decades of experience and has successfully placed over 1,000 roles in the automotive industry. So if you're ready to find your next rockstar employee, try CDG Recruiting today by visiting cdgrecruiting.com or clicking the link in the show notes below. Again, that's cdgrecruiting.com. So give us a little bit of a sneak peek. What's the next challenge you're working on for dealers that's not ready yet, right? And in other words, if we're chatting in 6 to 12 months, right? What have you solved? Where has meaningful progress been made to change the day-to-day life of a car dealer or a car buyer?
Yeah. I think from a dealer standpoint, right? I mean, we are very focused and are being very deliberate and intentional in taking our time and making the investments to ensure that we integrate the Outsell and Impel products appropriately. I think dealers are very sick of some of the large companies in our space that are aggregating up a bunch of solutions, buying a bunch of companies and never actually integrating them, right? They're pitched on this vision of we're going to have one cohesive integrated offering, and that doesn't actually happen. And so, again, I come from an investment banking background. The dirty little secret of investment banking is something like 60% of acquisitions are actually value destructive. And a lot of that's because of a lack of either cultural integration or, in this case, is product integration. And so we are very focused on integrating those products. And, I think 2 main areas that will excite dealers. One is having, for the first time, what we view as really a single pane of glass showing all customer interaction, showing Yossi's last 20 service visits, his last 7 vehicle purchases, what the gross profit of those were, when he interacted. So being able to have that single pane of glass kind of golden record orchestration hub is something we're super focused on. Integrating all the Impel communications into that singular pane is one area. Secondly is having a really, really coordinated approach between what Outsell does with marketing automation and what Impel does with AI outreach. So, if you think about that, Outsell is really serving as that kind of demand gen drumbeat of ongoing awareness. Impel then does what a BDC does or should be doing. And so in the case of, service, for example, an Outsell service piece could go out offering some kind of tire special. In an ideal world, the BDC rep would call a day later and say, hey, Yossi, I sent you a super customized special for, tires. Did you happen to receive it? And again, you've got that really coordinated two-layer approach with the drumbeat of awareness happening at the Outsell level and one-to-one AI outreach, which we, in some testing that we've done, is driving really outsized performance for dealers.
Yeah. It's you guys are working on some very, very important stuff, and you're clearly doing it the right way. I'm curious to know if would the cyber attacks changed your investment in cybersecurity? Like what was if I was a fly on the wall in your boardroom for the following 30 days there, what was discussed? How did that impact any decisions? Did it impact any decisions?
Yeah, look, I think it'd be bad governance if somebody, didn't raise the question naturally. What I would say is, thankfully our systems are built on a very modern infrastructure. Number one, we've got, we don't use a monolithic architecture like some of the large providers in the space do. Most of our products are built on a microservices architecture. So if you think about like our sales AI product, you may think of that as a product, but the way we've broken it down is into 57 different microservices. And so that, really reduces some of the vulnerability of a system. Secondly, we've had investments in data privacy and security for a long time. So we are SOC 2 Type 2 certified. We have a chief security officer in the business. We've been using, security training programs for a long time. So yeah, certainly, naturally it caused us to kind of relook and audit some of our internal policies. But the good news is a lot of that came back positively, that we were doing a lot of the right things, and that, again, we had invested in some of that privacy and security earlier on in the business's life cycle.
Got it. Give us some secrets of how a $100 million deal gets done in automotive retail, right? Give us the behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've been working with Outsell commercially for quite some time, right? So, one of the things that Outsell does is it will flag to a dealership anybody that has a high propensity score. So if they flag you, Yossi, as a 9 or a 10, that means there is a 98% probability that you're going to purchase a vehicle in the next, 1 week, for example. So they tell you that, and then the BDC or sales reps are responsible for making the outbound calls. Outsell realized dealerships will do that. They will call all of the 9s and 10s, but they don't actively follow up with people that are 6, 7, 8, meaning they're 80% likely to transact in the next month. Dealerships were often neglecting those, just given not enough hours in the day. There's still a huge amount of opportunity and gold in that population, and that's a great target for AI to go after, as it will follow up mercilessly and indiscriminately with all of those people. And so we had this ongoing existing commercial relationship with Outsell, which I think is the basis for any good acquisition, right? The leap of faith in an acquisition thesis is lessened significantly if you have an existing commercial partnership with somebody. And so we had that going for the last roughly 2 years, again, using our AI to tag people flagged as high buyer propensity, knowing that the BDC wouldn't get to them. I was actually at the Autovate conference, though, last year in December of 2023, when we started the corporate development. Yeah, let's go. When we started having the corporate development conversation. So that's when I met the CEO of Outsell for the first time. We realized that he was looking to retire. And that's when we started, kind of the conversation with them. We finally closed it. I think the deal closed at the end of June. We didn't announce it for a few weeks, given what was going on with CDK. But, that's the amount of effort. It took a full 6 months. And, again, I would say, compared to some of the other deals that we've done, right? This is our third acquisition. The first two were more product tuck-in style acquisitions. Outsell has 170 employees. They've got 20 years of operating history. They were in over 2,000 dealerships. It's a dramatically different style of acquisition. In addition to the focus that we have today on product integration, we are also very, very focused on cultural integration. Again, that's the reason that a lot of acquisitions fail. And so, we're really focused on bringing these two companies together. There are things that they do phenomenally that we're adopting at Impel and vice versa. And so couldn't be more excited, though. The more we've gotten to know the team and the products there, the more and more impressed we've become. And reactions from the industry have been simply amazing. Again, I think we knew we were buying value in data. We knew we were buying value in what they do with marketing automation, but just the outsized reactions that we've seen from customers when we show this single pane of glass vision, and this idea of a coordinated two-tiered approach has been really, really overwhelmingly positive.
Did you imagine that this would be the company in 2024 when, 5 years ago even? I mean, was this your vision to go really big and have this integrated platform? Have you exceeded your expectations? What's going through your head?
Yeah, I would say definitely. No, I never, never thought we would be a 500-person organization, doing business with, roughly 50% of US dealerships in one way or another, and, operating in 55 countries. So, business, I think, has exceeded our expectations. But, we've been really fortunate. If you think about back to when we first got into auto, the industry was moving quickly towards kind of e-commerce and digital retailing disruption, which was a strong tailwind for our merchandising business. Even COVID, while very scary and unfortunate, was also a catalyst for growth in our business line. And then, we did 2 AI acquisitions right before OpenAI released ChatGPT, right? Our second acquisition was in November of 2022, the same month that OpenAI released ChatGPT. That's provided a massive tailwind for our AI solution. So certainly has exceeded expectations, but we feel super fortunate.
It wouldn't be a CDG podcast if we didn't get a little personal. So like, how have you changed, right? I know, going from a startup to a 500-person company, and, still a startup, I mean, you're still an underdog and growing, but you as a leader, as a manager have to change, and your day-to-day is different. What have been the most impactful changes, would you say, on a personal level?
Yeah, no doubt about it, right? That's why you have to surround yourself with great people as well. I think a core change in my role has been, obviously early on, I was involved in every sales cycle, and, I'm not necessarily anymore. I think a key part of a founder's role, though, is being that culture carrier, right? So when you scale, you will have executives that you bring in that want to add a lot of administration and process, which is important selectively, obviously, as you want to continue, driving leverage in the business. But I think the job of a founder is to understand, how do we retain what's made us great? So some of those cultural values of hustle, grit, passion, while selectively adding administration and ensuring that doing that doesn't, again, kill that spirit. I think it's Jeff Bezos, right? You're always a startup, or it's always day zero, because once you start thinking it's day 1 or 2 is the day you start dying, kind of thing. And so ensuring that we continue to maintain that spirit, I think, is a critical part of my role, while again, selectively deciding where we need to add scalable processes.
Well said. Devin Daly, always a pleasure having you on. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I couldn't be more excited about the vision of what Outsell plus Impel equals. Again, we think, we're on the edge or the precipice of an AI evolution. We think pairing marketing automation with conversational AI is a massively winning combination. We've got some dealerships that are using it that are calling it the, quote, power stack. And, last comment I would make is, today, dealerships have a huge number of disparate systems that don't communicate with each other. They don't share insights with one another. It results in a lot of duplication of efforts at the dealership level. Finally, having one AI brain that manages all marketing automation as well as conversational AI will, for once, bring really harmony in organization to this chaos. So we'd love to chat with anybody that's interested.
Well said. And I'm excited to see where we're going to be in 6 months, because you're right, things are moving extremely quickly. Oh, and by the way, the name of the sales rep is Sarah. So
Sarah Casula. Yep, absolutely.
Well, shout out Sarah if you're listening. So that was you. So I love it. Devin, thanks for coming on, man. It was a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.